Hello, I'm Damian Mitchell, and thank you for joining us for this special Gleaner Editors Forum, the Crime Crisis 3, another in our series of Editors Forum looking at the issues of crime. Today, we turn the spotlight on criminal prosecutions, information gathering, and witness care. We're joined by the Director of Public Prosecutions, Paula Llewellyn, and a Deputy Director, Adley Duncan. Sharice Douglas is Manager for the National Crime Prevention Fund. We know them as Crime Stop. Sandra Glasgow is the chairperson for Crime Stop, and Stephanie Lindsay, Senior Superintendent of the Jamaica Constabulary Force. Generally, we begin by allowing each entity 2 minutes for the opening comments. So DPP, can we begin with you with your 2 minutes?
Recording in progress.
I may proceed. First of all,
yes, you may.
Let me say good morning. Yes. Good morning, everybody. Good morning to your viewers and your listeners. Prosecution is an experience-driven occupation. It is very, very hard work. And as a prosecutor, I'd have to say 95% of the prosecutors that I've met, we look at it as a vocation. We work very closely with the police. We work very closely with other agencies, and our role and function is not to win or to lose, but it is to put forward the best available evidence that is credible, cogent, reliable, and admissible to get a just result. I have been privileged to have been a prosecutor for a little bit over 30 years, and I have seen where a lot of the cases have now exemplify a lot of technicality, a lot of complexity, and we try our very best to work with the police, work with other agencies to make sure that we get a just result. And of course, let me make it quite clear. Just result not only means to succeed in respect of getting a conviction, but also when we do our work in the Court of Appeal, where we defend convictions, if it is that there has been an error or a misdirection by a judge, we have a responsibility because we are guided by the law to concede. And let me say, finally, I am aware that there will always be an uneasy tension between the court of public opinion, where professionals like Mr. Damian Mitchell, members of the media, and many members of the public can allow themselves, even though they may be aware of the facts, to be carried away by emotion. And that
we'll pick up on some of those issues, DPP, when we come to the issue of question.
But if I may say it silently, we are only guided by the law. Thank you.
Let's go to SSP Stephanie Lindsay for your 2 minutes. SSP Lindsay. I'm sorry, we're not hearing SSP Lindsay. Ensure you're unmuted, SSP Lindsay.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, very clearly.
All right, so let me just say good morning to my panelists, and good morning to our viewers and listeners. And just to say that for us in the law enforcement community, witness care is very important, because the role of the police when a crime is committed and we seek to get justice for the victim, our role is to investigate and to present the facts and the evidence before a tribunal. And in order for us to have the best case is that we rely heavily on the witnesses. So part of our responsibility as law enforcement practitioners to ensure that our witnesses are protected, they are supported, and ensure that whatever information they send to us are credible and one that can withstand an effective test before a tribunal. Those are my opening remarks.
Thank you very much, SSP. Sharice Douglas is the manager for Crime Stop. We now allow her 2 minutes. Sharice?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Good morning to panelists. Good morning to your listeners and viewers. I'm Sharice, and the lovely lady in red is our chairperson of National Crime Prevention Fund. We are a non-for-profit charitable organization whose mission is to assist in the detection and the reduction and prevention of crime through offering the most secure avenue for citizens to give information anonymously on all forms of crime. So we are interested in information gathering and sharing. We are very successful through our tripartite partnership with the Jamaica Constabulary Force, the media, and the community. And it is our vision to be the preferred channel for citizens to use in providing information without sharing their identity.
Very well. Well, may I pick up then with a question for you at Crime Stop? Probably Mrs. Glasgow can take this on. Has Crime Stop been seeing an increase in support from the business communities amid the COVID pandemic?
Well, we have seen an increase in support. We actually onboarded 3 corporate sponsors as opposed to just 1 last year. So we're seeing persons, citizens and companies alike, who are interested and eager to support our organization. We are interested in having more persons on board, yes, but we are seeing an increased interest in our organization.
And I just want to add, Damien, that we have a very close relationship with the private sector. We were actually the creation of an initiative of the private sector organization of Jamaica in 1989, actually spearheaded by the late Honorable Gordon Booth Stewart. So our relationship with the private sector is very strong. And you would have noticed a new campaign that we have been running since April, I believe. And that campaign has been largely paid for by the private sector.
And in terms of the payout you have or would have made last year compared with previous years, are we seeing an increase or a decrease?
Last year in particular, there was a decrease, and I think it's largely in due part to the COVID pandemic, because we saw a drastic decrease in the tips that we've received in 2020 as opposed to 2019. For instance, in 2020, we only received 679 tips as opposed to 2019, where we received 1,050. But nevertheless, we are seeing persons who are giving information, even though the number of tips have decreased. The information that we're getting are pertinent information that yields very good success. So we're getting, so far this year, for instance, we've only received 308 tips, but we've managed to assist in the seizures of 19 illegal firearms and 279 rounds of ammunition. So we are very happy on the quality of tips that we're receiving so far.
I want to come back to the issue as to the exact payout and what amounts you're paying out for what kind of information. But let me ask the SSP to weigh in here, because generally the process of witness care begin with the police. Are you seeing SSP where the issue of witness care is now being understood by more of your members? Because that had long been a complaint.
I think it has always been understood by members, but I can say that we have been doing some additional things to ensure that we get more of our witnesses to come forward, because I think in many instances, persons are afraid to come forward because of fear. So part of it is that we have had several campaigns and several information sessions with our witnesses, just to reassure them and to provide them with the confidence that they can actually come forward and give the evidence, and we see what the outcome is, because they generally stay away, and staying away from the process really makes it more difficult for them as witnesses. So as we engage them more and we introduce them more to the witness protection program and avenues where they can give evidence and be protected, we are seeing where they are more confident in coming forward.
DPP Paula Llewellyn, how is this impacting you?
Well, as I indicated before, if you don't have witnesses to give cogent, credible, reliable, admissible evidence, then you don't have a case. And it's a challenge, because the elephant in the room is the I don't want to be an informer mentality, or informer fidel, which is glorified in some of the 1 or 2 DJ songs that I've heard about. And unfortunately, it has attached to a sort of cultural imperative in some communities. And sometimes it goes across the spectrum of background circumstances, and along with the police, we as prosecutors sometimes have to really, put our back to the wheel, to use moral suasion to convince witnesses. I'll share a story with you. My senior deputy won't mind. She had a murder case in St. Mary, and the main witness was a pig farmer. And she got word from the police that he was not too enthusiastic to come. So she decided to visit with him, try to convince him to come to court. And we do that all the time. Mr. Duncan is on, he will tell you. And when she went, she was in her suit. She had left court the evening, so she was still in her black suit. And she stepped gingerly through the pig pen to the gentleman's veranda and had a lovely conversation with him. And he seemed convinced and indicated to her that he would attend court. This was in the St. Mary Circuit the following morning. And a little rain had fallen, so the particular stones through the pig pen that just said got a little slippery, unknown to her. And as she was stepping back, she slipped and fell face down in the pig pen in her suit. Needless to say, it had to be discarded. And she said to me, Miss Llewellyn, with all of that, do you know that the next morning we're ready to start the case and the witness did not, the main witness, he did not attend? When they sent the police to his home, he had cleared out pigs and all overnight.
Wow.
So, that's just the tip of the iceberg. But on the converse, you do have witnesses who swim like salmon upstream and are determined, cost it what it will, to give that evidence. And that is where the witness protection program sometimes can assist, as well as witnesses working with the police and the prosecutors in terms of keeping in close touch with us, we keeping in close touch with them, and making sure that we help them to, let us call it this way, to be strategic in terms of how they manage their circumstances up to the time of trial.
I want to get Adley Duncan to weigh in here, but I want to ask you, DPP, are you seeing increased incidents of witnesses, I beg your pardon, staying away, or are you seeing a change in the curve where more witnesses are now willing to come forward?
I think I would have to say that you would still have to say each case depends on its own particular merits and facts. I'll allow Adley to weigh in on that.
And while you prepare to speak, Mr. Duncan, I want you to really take on this issue of electronic technology as an alternative, as opposed to relying on witnesses.
And good morning, everyone. And that's exactly where I wanted to go. So I hope to answer both questions at once in this way. So, earlier on in earlier days, I mean, I'm a young prosecutor compared to the DPP, but certainly been doing it for over a decade now. And, I found that there was more of a sort of reluctance, 5-10 years ago than there is now. I think the work of agencies like Crime Stop are very valuable, because I think that what we need is a cultural shift in attitudes to collaborating with stakeholders and working in the justice system. And I think we're getting there. A cultural shift will not happen overnight, but I think the work of agencies like Crime Stop, where they kind of make witnesses more confident in coming to court. And of course, the media plays a very valuable role in helping witnesses understand what happens in court. So it's not this big ivory tower abstract thing, but a real thing that they feel that they can participate in. I think that has been very helpful in encouraging witnesses to step forward in ways that did not exist, say, a few years ago. Now, when it comes to technology and electronic evidence, there have been significant developments in the law where this is concerned. And witnesses are now able to give evidence online, so to speak. You have something called video link evidence, where a witness, because I mean, if you step out of the abstract, conceptual, trial thing, these are real people with real lives, with real fears. And a human being who feels intimidated or threatened, going to the physical building of court, it may feel quite intimidating. So when you have an option where witness can stay around persons around whom they feel safe, in an office, in a home, in a room, away from the physical court building, I'm seeing more confidence on the part of witnesses. And I think that this has improved tremendously in terms of having witnesses actually come forward and give evidence in ways that I didn't see 5, 6 years
Mr.
ago.
Duncan, that in real life, that's in big court downtown. What's happening in the parish courts where the bulk of criminal cases begin and end?
Well, I must say that when it comes to like it's the murder cases, the wounding cases, the shooting cases, the rape cases, that's where I think I'm seeing more of the vulnerability and the intimidation. Yes, it does happen at the parish courts, but of course those offenses are less serious in nature usually, and those tend to be more, I want to say, interpersonal kind of thing. So, you know, your arguments, your quarrels, they do have serious cases down there, yes, but I think the level of reluctance and intimidation tends to happen at the high court where you have the more serious type of offenses. Not to say it doesn't happen at the parish court, but I definitely find that in my experience, you do find more intimidation with the big building downtown.
And in the rural courts where there, in fact, rural parishes where there are circuit courts, you're having major matters there too, which would be quite sensitive. I mean,
right. And the same rules would apply. The same rules would apply. So, you know, when it's circuit time and big time in St. Mary, in St. Anne, in Portland, wherever it is, you know, once the court is held as a circuit court, then you will find this kind of maybe oppressive bearing. But to answer the question, I do think that we are going in the right direction culturally. We are calling out this informal for debt culture. We're understanding it's not a good thing. I think every Jamaican citizen wants the country to run right and to run smoothly. And that can't happen without cooperation. So everybody thinks it's somebody else's job, but they don't want to do it. And I think
I'm also hearing from you, though, Mr. Duncan, a call for the same video link technologies in some of these circuit courts in rural parishes.
Say again, sorry?
Am I also hearing from you a call for video link technology, for example?
But I've gone to rural parishes and used video link. It's very much the government of Jamaica through the Ministry of Justice and our Minister Delroy Chuck. He worked, I think, very hard in making sure that all our rural courts are equipped with this technology as well. So we're not just focusing on the capital and the rest of Jamaica. You know, we forget about them. Every courtroom that I have visited in wider Jamaica, I've seen the technology, and I know that we've used it in courts all around Jamaica. Maybe not perfectly, but I know we definitely have the technological infrastructure.
Damian, I want to weigh in here, if I might, just to support what DPP and Adley have said in terms of this cultural shift that we need to make. And I think you would have seen our campaign that we've started, which is really an appeal to every Jamaican to say, listen, if you don't stand up for your country, you know, who will? And that involves telling what you know. And, you know, Crime Stop has very secure channels. We're always proud to say in our 33 years of existence, we have never had a case compromise, an informant compromise. So it's very important for people to know that if they want to see this country grow and prosper, that they have a role to play in telling what, because lots of people know stuff, you know, and what we pride ourselves in doing is providing secure channels. So we have a 311 our telephone, we have a web tips on our website, and we have a URL that you can use on your phone that you can send text and video and voice in order to share what you know.
Very well. SSP Lindsay, we do have Tanisha Mundle who is standing by with a question, but let me ask you, are there any immediate plans that you're aware of for further investments in technology in the crime fighting effort?
Well, I am aware of a lot because we are going through a major transformation, and a big part of that transformation is the expansion of our technological products. So a lot of the things that you are seeing now and some of the results that we are getting, even in our criminal investigation cases that are doing much better, we are even seeing where the investigators have put together the cases aided by technology in such a way that we are getting more guilty pleas because the evidence is of that quality. So we continue to expand. So we are well advanced in terms of our sciences, our DNA, other types of technology, equipment that we're using. So that has been a big part of our transformation, and we are already seeing the results, and we continue to work on it.
Okay, very well. Tanisha Mundle, you can go ahead with your question. You may need to unmute, Tanisha.
Good morning. My question is for SSP Lindsay and for the DPP. It relates to the resources in the Witness Protection Program. Inadequate resources has long been a problem facing the Witness Protection Program. I want to know if there has been improvement in this area and if there is now sufficient funds there to meet the needs of the witnesses.
All right. So as it relates to the Witness Protection Program, it's really not run by the JCF. It is run by the ministry. However, the Jamaica Constabulary Force's role in it is to liaison with the program and to refer witnesses who are interested in being a part of the program to it. I spoke earlier this morning with the officer who is the liaison officer with the force about the program, and we asked about some of those things. And from his account, based on what he knows, because we really don't know a lot about the ins of the program, but based on the discussion with the witnesses, because they are the only ones who interact with the witnesses apart from the investigator, then they are seeing where they have improved. There has been improvement in some of the things that persons would normally complain about. But in terms of the day-to-day operation and the funding and all of that, that is more done by the Ministry of National Security.
DPP, can you share any or shed any light on this?
I think it would be very good if you perhaps got the CEO of that program to speak on something like this. He's Mr. Glenn Jackson, and they're trying to do their very best with the resources that we have from where I sit. And may I say that the Office of the DPP over the last year, we now have a witness care officer, and we have a small team which is led by an assistant director dealing with witness care. So we liaise with the Witness Protection Program, and as SSP Lindsay did say, it is run by the Ministry of National Security, but it's very confidential, because not even the prosecutors, we don't know where the witnesses on the program are being kept. And you have witnesses all over Jamaica being kept elsewhere and also abroad. You have some witnesses who are being kept abroad, depending on the circumstances and the sensitivity and the particular risk that, that is involved. So we think it's working well, but I think Adley would agree with me, because we have to interface with these witnesses when they come to court or when they have to be interviewed. And sometimes
are you not picking up some amount of discomfort with some of these witnesses in the program? I mean,
some of them complain, they may complain, because let's face it, you are taken out of your environment and you are placed in a totally different space, perhaps maybe 2 or 3 parishes away, or sometimes you are kept abroad. We have known of witnesses who have been kept abroad and they have been allowed to settle under another name, and I gather doing very, very well. You will have some of them here who settle. They may have been from an inner city area in Kingston, and they are settled in a rural area far away, and they have thrived, and they're glad for the change. You have some of them where it is a challenge, because you're going to be leaving a lot of the people that you know. And especially if you're accustomed to being around a lot of people in one yard, it's difficult to be put somewhere where it may be just you and your spouse, and maybe a couple of your children. But the Witness Protection Program, they are trying rather. And recently I spoke to Mr. Jackson, and I spoke to my assistant director who heads our little unit here, and we're going to have a couple of joint seminars with them so that they can better understand some of the challenges we face in terms of the witnesses. Because let me tell you something, if a witness decides, even on the program, to absent themselves, so that when the witness care officer, their care officer, goes to pick them up and they are not there, then you have a problem. It has happened, and invariably when you do catch up with the witness has complaints. So there has to be a lot of open communication. There has to be an awareness of the risks involved, but I find that communication is what is critical. But
well, let me stick with that issue because there is a witness charter that exists on the Justice Ministry's website, but is there adequate information? Do people know about this? And are the elements of it being enforced? So for example, the informing of witnesses when those who are on parole would have been released.
Well, I think there is an attempt to inform witnesses or families of victims if that happens, but I believe much more could be done. Much more could be done.
SSP Lindsay, I want to get your take on this, and I also want to hear from Crime Stop in respect of the witness charter and ensuring that people know about it, and particularly as it relates to informing witnesses that convicts would be on parole or released on bail.
So as it relates to the witnesses, I think most of the times what our officers do is that they work very closely with the correctional department, because it's the correctional department that really would notify us of persons who are about to be released on parole and all of that. So we develop a working relationship with them. Sometimes we get the information on time, sometimes it's a little delayed, but what we try to do is that whenever we get the information, and I know it is something that both entities have strengthened over time, especially when some persons are out, because when you're not sure what is happening, you might see somebody who was in prison, not sure, you see them out in the community persons are concerned themselves, not sure what is happening. So it is something that we continue to work on. As it relates to the witness protection program, when I speak with the investigator, it is something that they are trying to encourage more witnesses to go on. And like our DPP explained that some persons, even though would have done the risk assessment and of the view that you're an ideal candidate for the program, but even the risk, sometimes they don't want to be displaced, for want of a better term. They don't want to be removed from their comfort zone. So they remain in the community, and sometimes the outcome is fatal, but we do try. And I know that with the education, I think public education around it and the benefit could encourage more witnesses, because sometimes people are fearful of things because they don't have sufficient information, and they rely on information that they hear from others who have never experienced the program. So it creates some kind of uncertainty and fear and anxiety.
But don't you believe that as a matter of course, witnesses should be informed when the convicts are being released on parole or have completed their sentences?
I think it is useful, and it is something that I said before, we are working very closely with the correctional department, because remember, once they are convicted now, and they go into the prison system, they're no longer in the custody of the police. So we now will rely on our partners in the correctional department to update us when the parole, so we will get a list of persons who we usually get a list when they are now. So they are working now that when persons are coming up for parole or to be released, we get a list so we know ahead of time. So it is something that we're working on.
Well, reporter Jovan Johnson has a question, but before he comes in, I want to hear from Mrs. Glasgow and perhaps Sharice on the matter of parole. Do you think as a matter of rule, witnesses should be informed when convicts are granted parole?
Well, all I can say about that, Damien, is that if I were a victim, I would like to know, so I believe that citizens have a right to know if somebody who has perpetrated a crime against them and has been incarcerated and is going to be released. I think that's something that's information people ought to have. So I would support that.
Right.
Sharice, you have a
Yes,
word?
definitely. As Mrs. Glasgow said, I'm in support of that. And I will also mention that as SSP Lindsay and DPP Lowell stated, I believe better communication is key with effective witness care. We do believe that public awareness, because as SSP Lindsay pointed out, we tend to get our information from people who are not involved. So I do believe public awareness is the best way, is key to efficient witness care.
Very well. So we want to come back to the matter of the actual payout on the Crime Stop, and we want to look at the issue to DPP on the actual backlog you're now working with. But let me allow Jovan Johnson to go first with this question. Jovan?
Hi, thank you, Damien. Good morning. Question more so to the DPP and to SSP Lindsay. Regarding criminal prosecution, I wonder how has the mutual legal assistance treaty and other kinds of similar legislation that are used in criminal prosecution, the current regime, how effective is it? Where do you see the need for it to be stronger, such that cooperation with cross-border or external jurisdictions can improve, such that you're able to get witnesses, for example, you're able to get persons who the police believe are on the radar, are critical to investigations, to come here? And tied to that, SSP Lindsay, I don't recall ever seeing the number of persons, for example, extradited here. The DPP could also speak on this, but in terms of how has that process been for police investigations to be complete?
I hear to Madam DPP.
DPP, you may want to go first on that matter of the mutual legal assistance treaty. Does it
As
need
you
review?
know-
Does it need strengthening?
As you are aware, I am the designated central authority for mutual legal assistance. And in terms of the number of units that we have in our office, that unit, which is headed by a senior deputy director of public prosecution, Ms. Maxine Jackson, is our biggest unit. I think we have a little bit over 20 lawyers, and we have a paralegal who is dedicated to that unit. And we service clients in terms of countries all over the world. I think I can say here that Jamaica has a very, very high rating and is very well regarded by our three main critical partners, Canada, the US, and England, in terms of delivering in respect of requests that are sent to us. You have, as well as the formal program under the Mutual Legal Assistance Act, you also have a lot of law enforcement, which SSP Lindsay would know about, because it's not everything that has to be dealt with in that formal atmosphere where you have to, unless you have to go to court to get production orders or get restraint orders in respect of the forfeiture of property or something like that. We have found that and we encourage it, quite a lot is done law enforcement to law enforcement. And it usually is very confidential. And SSP Lindsay, I think, would bear me out that it can still be very good in that you can expedite certain things, and where it is that you would need a more formal procedure, we are available to advise the central authority in the different countries. But I don't think, I think the level of cooperation is very, very good, and we have very good open channels to our partners abroad. So if it is that we need to get something done, it is done. We go to court, we get the orders. Law enforcement to law enforcement, it's just because it is very confidential why you would not be privy to some of what takes place, but you may see the result of it, where persons are nabbed here in Jamaica or persons are nabbed abroad. But I can assure you,
we're fast running out of time, DPP. So let me just ask you quite quickly, any date yet in relation to that traffic guru matter, which is another matter coming under this mutual legal assistance treaty?
Well, I'm sorry, we are still waiting on the Supreme Court to write to us formally about a date. I can say that the Dutch authorities, from the correspondence that we have received recently, they are very, very interested in the matter being completed. I'm not privy, I'm not able to say exactly what was said, but suffice it to say, they too are waiting along with us anxiously for the date to begin.
And will they be coming back here for that hearing?
I'm not going to make any comment on that. Suffice it to say that they are very, very interested to see to the completion of this matter.
Very well. And since we have you, let me ask in respect of the backlog you're now working with, are you seeing a reduction, or has COVID made it worse for you?
Well, first of all, you know, there's, to me, the whole concept of a backlog. Every country has a backlog, because there's no way that you can have a case being brought to court and have it done immediately, unless the person is going to plead guilty, or unless they're going to be entering a nullity or offering no evidence. What has happened under this Chief Justice? He has taken the concept of criminal case management a step further from what the former Chief Justice was doing. So we have a concept called trial date certainty. So cases are now being set, certainly in the circuit court. And I think Adley, they're practicing it in the courts below, where you set a date and both the Crown and the defense, you have to put up or shut up. So I think that is working well in respect of trial date certainty, and it's also preventing double and triple booking by defense counsel, who will agree a date in one case, knowing that they have two cases in another place. So that is working well.
And
so,
on this trajectory, what's your expectation?
Well, the thing is, I know that the figures in the parish court are looking very good from what the last report that I heard the Chief Justice at another forum. They are looking very good. So they are having a rate of disposal, which is almost first world. In fact, better in some respects. However, in the circuit courts, because you are dealing with trial by jury for the most part, unless it's a lotto scam case, a gun court matter, or a human trafficking matter, or an anti-gang matter, you are dealing with jurors. So you have a whole other component. During COVID times, I would say in perhaps 80% of the cases, circuit-wide, island-wide, the lawyers are adamant that they wish to try their cases with the jury. We have been getting a few cases, but I would say perhaps only 30% of the case stock that they are prepared to try by judge alone. But we make that offer, we have those discussions, but by and large, the majority indicate that they wish to remain. So it will create a little more of the backlog, but we have been getting some guilty pleas. We have been administratively astute and trying to make sure that where no evidence has to be offered or knowledge to be entered, it is done. But by and large, we still have to await for the full reopening in respect of being able to deal with jury matters.
Very well. We have about 4 minutes left to go, and I want to get Mr. Duncan on this matter of the Criminal Justice Administration Act. The amendment allows for restitution to be made to victims of crime, but have you been seeing enough instances of restitution in cases in the courts?
Well, enough is obviously a relative question, but you made reference to the witness charter earlier, and I definitely endorse the contents of the document, which talk about, making a better and bigger account for witnesses, because I don't have much time. What I will say is that for human trafficking cases, which I've handled quite a few of, we are seeing compensation and restitution for victims, because that specific act, which governs those prosecutions, makes specific account and allowances for that. Other statutes don't necessarily have, I'm aware of the amendment, but it's taking some time for that to enter the consciousness and relatives of the judicial officers who aren't usually accustomed to making those kinds of awards in those kinds of cases. But we are seeing very slowly, very gradually, an increasing number, and maybe we'll eventually get to the point where restitution is a matter of course and not something unusual.
Well, I was about to ask you, how do we accelerate this?
Training, exposure, experience. As I said, cultural shifts, they don't happen overnight. So once we're headed in the right direction, we just keep going in the right direction.
SSP Lindsay, would this help the police any at all in having witnesses come forward if they know that they could have some restitution at the end of a conviction?
It's a possibility because it's an incentive, but for the most part, I think the main reason why a lot of witnesses don't come forward is fear. I think that's the main reason. They are afraid of the outcome. There are persons who really want to get justice and they would really want to come forward. So if we can continue to work with them to convince them that what's available can protect them and it's in the best interest of their own quest for justice, as opposed to make communities safer, I believe that's where we really want to go, to get more people to understand the benefits and to know how the system works.
But Mr.
Well, almost like,
I'm sorry, we can't put everything in it, because there are some witnesses who allow themselves to be bought out. We have had, Mr. Duncan will tell you, we have had situations where you have one or two witnesses, even victims, who allow themselves to be bought out and convinced that, okay, I will pay you this and don't bother to come to court and give the evidence against me. I have done a case where in the middle of the case while the victim is giving the evidence, the accused, who was in the dock, stayed in prison got a phone somehow, and called the witness to ask him not to continue to give the evidence. And he reported the matter to the police. And all I could say to the police, just tell him to remember his oath. He went on, and we got a conviction both for murder and the wounding with intent. So it depends. But by and large, as Ms. Lindsay did say, most people will tend to say that it is fair. On occasion, I have had to interface with a couple of witnesses, and when we drill right down to it, they may say it is fear, but it is really fear of the concept of fear. And it's a convenient thing to hold on to, because I'm sure Mr. Duncan can tell you of cases. I've had cases where when you sit and you reason with the particular witness, they're almost somewhat sheepish and ashamed. That is really not fear. It is apathy, it is lethargy, it is a lack of knowledge of what it takes to be a citizen. That unless you get into the arena, you're not going to get any justice, because the police are not going to be eyewitnesses to what occurred. Everybody wants the police to do this or the prosecutor to do this. But unless you have that evidence coming from the eyewitness or a witness, if we have circumstantial evidence who is willing to identify a particular object, you're not going to get the justice.
Well, you've hit the nail on the head, DPP, and probably I should let you complete this sentence as we take a final wrap on this. For more witnesses to participate in the criminal justice program, we must
make sure that people are sensitized in their communities to the fact that unless you participate in the process, you encourage other persons, you willingly become a member of the alliance of the law-abiding, you turn away from the accommodation of criminality, then you will not get justice.
Mr. Duncan, complete the sentence for me, please. For more witnesses to participate in the criminal justice process, we must?
We must make sure that we offer witnesses a comfortable space where they understand their role as a citizen and feel the inherent incentive and not pressure, but something coming from within for them to truly understand that justice requires their participation.
Mrs. Glasgow, can you take it on? For more witnesses to participate in the criminal justice process, we must?
We must assure them that the information they provide can be dealt with in a confidential manner, and that there are, programs that will protect them. I wanted to also speak from the point of view of the community, Damien, because I'm also chair of our Neighborhood Watch group. And, we have come together to make sure that our community is protected by doing, sharing information amongst ourselves. I have to say, I have to give out a big shout out to the police. The Matildas Corner Police, I live in that community, has been very responsive. We have security firms that provide services who are also part of our group. And it's amazing how coming together and sharing information and being proactive can really help to solve crime and even help to deter crime.
Very well. We'll pick up on some of those issues in the ensuing discussions. Let me go to SSP Stephanie Lindsay, though, to complete the sentence. For more witnesses to participate in the criminal justice process, we must?
So we must ensure that our witnesses are aware of what's available to support them. We must ensure as law enforcement officers and investigators that we develop that relationship with our witnesses, that we continue to build their confidence. And of course, we must ensure that when things happen, even at the community level, even within the family, similar to how we see the perpetrators get that kind of support, we also want to see family members and the community rallying behind the witnesses, because it may happen to one individual, but as long as that person remains at large, other members of that community can be affected.
And I want to go to Sharice Douglas, and I don't forget, Sharice, that you are to provide us with the actual number of our amount for payouts. So let me take that and then have you complete your sentence.
Okay, for the payouts this year, you want, or?
This year compared to last year.
Okay,
We can have the
all right.
figures.
In terms of payouts this year, so far we've paid out $2.3 million in rewards in comparison to last year, which was just 1.4 million. So we're
For
seeing
the
an
entire year?
for year to date, from January to May of this year, we paid out 2.3 as opposed to the same period last year's 1.4. So, and in terms of this 2020, we paid out 5.8 as opposed to 2019, where we paid out 8.2 million, right?
Very well.
And
Well,
I must interject here that of all these millions that we paid out, for instance, with the year to date this year, it's only 8% of our tipsters ask for a reward. Similar amount last year, it's just 78% of our tipsters. So we are realizing that people are doing it because it's the civic minded, they want to make a difference in their communities. So to move on to my sentence.
Well, before you move on to your sentence, let me just ask you a follow-up. Are you seeing most of these sums being paid out for recovery of guns,
Yes.
information for murders, etc.?
Yes. Majority of our rewards are paid for the seizures of illegal firearms, arrest and charge of possession of illegal firearms, and arrest and charge with suspected murderers.
I want to also acknowledge support we are getting from the Ministry of National Security, Damian, because we do have a fund.
Very well.
That
we'll have to pick up on some of those.
Yes.
Have to pick up on some of those issues quite shortly. But let me just close the program right now with Ms. Douglas, giving her final sentence. For more witnesses to participate in the criminal justice process, we must
realize that in order for us to get the change that we want, we have to take that personal responsibilities. We have to take that patriotic approach. We have to promote that cultural shift of removing that informal for dead mentality. All of us are in it together. And for us to have a safer community, each of us has to take responsibility and stand against crime.
Well, thank you so very much. That's all the time we have for this special Gleaner Editors Forum, the Crime Crisis 3, another in our series of Editors Fora, looking at the issues of crime. Thanks to the Director of Public Prosecutions, Paula Llewellyn, and her Deputy, Adley Duncan. Thanks also to Sharice Douglas, Manager of the National Crime Prevention Fund. We know them as Crime Stop. Sandra Glasgow is the chairperson of the fund. And thanks also to Senior Superintendent of Police, Stephanie Lindsay of the Jamaica Constabulary Force. I'm Damian Mitchell. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, Damian.
Thank you.